Welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for the first virtual town hall meeting of 2019. NACADA will be holding 5 virtual town halls this spring that will cover a range of issues that we are hoping will prove helpful to you. Our first topic today is Region Review. Next slide. Our panel presenters will introduce themselves a little later in the presentation. NACADA board members are serving as the moderators for today's session. My name is Megumi Makino Kanehiro, and I am from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. I am joined by my colleagues.
Good afternoon, I'm Brody Broshears with the University of Southern Indiana.
And good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. My name's Kerry Kincannon. I'm from Oregon State University.
Next slide, please. NACADA cares deeply about this subject, and as you can see, there was a wonderful team assembled to work on the Region Review Group. They will be coming in later, and they will also introduce themselves later. Next slide, please. NACADA cares deeply about this subject. In order to answer questions, additional team members will be joining us, and they will introduce themselves later. The agenda for today is as follows. Since we have completed introductions, we'll explain the format for the session. We will also provide a brief overview of the Region Review and how it connects to NACADA's strategic goals. The panel will give a brief presentation. Time has been allotted for questions and comments from you, the members. And finally, we will wrap up the session and discuss next steps. Next slide, please.
As you'll see the schedule for our remaining virtual town halls on the screen here today, one of the real highlights, I think, of the town hall is the opportunity for participants to provide feedback using the question and answer function in the Zoom platform. You can also visit the Region Review website, where we're going to have a Google form for participants that don't utilize the Q&A function today. And regional review panelists will also have additional information today about how you can have your voice heard on this critically important issue. Next slide, please. So the rationale today for our town hall is to inform the community about the region review process. We're going to talk briefly on the process so far and discuss how members will be able to participate in upcoming focus groups and give you all a chance to provide us with comments, questions, and feedback. Next slide, please. So today the outcomes are pretty simple, right? You're going to hear the insights and perspectives from NACADA leaders who've been closely affiliated with the region review process. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to view the demographic data from the recent region review survey, as well as give you an opportunity via that Zoom question and answer function to ask questions and provide suggestions related to region review. In terms of the NACADA strategic goals, I think anytime we do these virtual town halls, we want to connect our topic to the NACADA strategic goals. I would direct your attention today to goals 2, 4, and 6, right? Region Review is really focused in on making sure that we're providing professional development opportunities that are responsive to the needs of advisors and advising administrators. We want to foster inclusive practices within the association that respect the principle of equity and the diversity of advising professionals across the vast array of intersections of identity, as well as geography. Right, and we also want to help professionals engage in the ongoing assessment of all facets of the association. And the region review process really hits at all 3 of those pretty critically. At this point, what I want to do is turn it over to our region review panelists, and they're going to get started.
Well, thank you so much, Brody and Megumi, for that lead up. We're really excited to be kicking off the first town hall for the 2019 year. So I just want to begin by introducing myself, Melinda Anderson, one of the Region Review co-chairs, and I've been a Region 2 chair, a member, and currently serving on the council as a regional review, a regional division rep. And so I'll have my colleagues Kelly and Shay introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shay Ellingham. I am a longtime member of NACADA. I think it's been about 10 years now since I've been a member of NACADA. I am from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I've been lucky enough to be a region conference chair twice. I don't know why I decided to do it twice, but I did. And I'm also one of the co-chairs for the Canadian Advising Community for NACADA, which has really been a wonderful opportunity for me to connect with academic advisors from across Canada. We have a long-standing history of being a part of NACADA, and we're really excited to be part of this project.
Hello, good day, everyone. My name is Kelly J. Medley. Like Melinda, I am one of the co-chairs of this region review process. Currently, I am serving NACADA also on the council as one of the regional division representatives. And I'm also a former chair of Region 10.
Next slide, thank you. And so to speak to that excitement about this project, being a part of the regional division on the council, it's just been a wonderful opportunity to see how our regions are coming together and providing professional development for our members in NACADA. And so with that, the board had charged the regional division with doing a complete and thorough examination of our present region structure and to determine how well we were serving our members. And so it is important that we not only understand how to provide the best possible professional development, but also thinking deeply about what does it mean to provide this professional development in the regional structure in relationship to the way that we are organized globally, right? So the global organization in relationship to the regional structure is something that we also wanted to investigate, as well as determining what are the best ways to serve our members. Next slide. So as you can see that this project, it took on legs, and it was really important that we had a lot of stakeholders involved in the process. So how did we come together to create a plan, if you will, about how are we going to collect all the information that we need in order to inform important decisions moving forward? So what you see here on this slide are, of course, some of my colleagues that have already introduced themselves, but you can see that it was important for us to make sure that we were thinking broadly about how we were involving leadership into this process. So you'll see that we have a former region rep for the regional division, and then former Region 2 chairs. And it was important that we had relationships with the Global Initiatives Committee, and then you can see how we're connected to the Research Center and the important work that they're doing, but then also taking a look at EO support, because it is really important that we do this right and we do this well. And so making sure that we had the full support of the EO to move forward with this process. Next slide. And so who would we be in NACADA if we weren't thinking deeply about the structure and the questions that we should be asking ourselves as we move forward in this process? So you'll see in front of you are the 4 research questions that came together. We had an on-site meeting, and we sat down in the room and we thought, how do we approach this project in a way that we are answering the true questions that we intend to have answered? So you can see that one of our important questions was, what do members see as contributing factors to standing in the way of engagement or affinity to NACADA? It was important as we think about professional development, what are the ways in which people want to engage with NACADA? There are so many ways to engage with professional development. What are our members wanting to see? And then what do they see as valuable? As we think about that, time is a zero-sum proposition, right? So if you spend time here versus time there, what does that really mean in terms of how people think about the professional development? And then when you think about the current organizational structure that facilitates this engagement and professional development, how are we thinking about what NACADA is doing? And then lastly, what aspects of our current organizational structure prevent engagement and professional development? And so that goes back to the global context, right, in which NACADA is beginning to operate. And so these are the 4 questions that we are attempting to answer with the way that we're collecting our information. Next slide. So to that end, we came up with 3 subcommittees, and one was looking at the data that we had already collected at NACADA. That was one subgroup. Another subgroup was to create a survey that you can see was distributed to current and former members. That was in November. And then another subgroup was committed to looking at the focus group dynamic. It's important for us to not collect just quantitative data, but then also thinking about the qualitative aspect of how we want to gather feedback from our membership and non-members. So for example, we have virtual focus groups that are going to be launched this spring, and then we will have face-to-face focus groups in our regional and international conference opportunities that we're conducting this spring. So with that said, I will turn this over to Kelly, and she'll talk to us a little bit more about the survey portion of the work that we've already done.
Thank you, Melinda. And thank you to all of you for attending today who also possibly took this survey. For those of you who did see it, you're maybe already familiar with a little bit of this information, but we conducted this survey through Qualtrics. That's a survey system. And it was emailed to 29,000 current and former members of NACADA, because we did also want the input of our most recent members as well. It was open roughly, mid-November through mid-December, and sorry, next slide. And you can see here the distribution of those who did take the survey by institution type. This is, we feel, pretty consistent with our actual memberships institution type as well, a good representative sample. So, next slide. This is an example of one of the demographic questions that we asked in the survey. There were several, but this is a good example. Where do you work? The current region structure is only including the US, Canada, and our Caribbean nations. So we wanted to know from our global members also where they were working. So we did also collect that, not just by a country other, but also by the country that they work in. We're proud of the response from the members outside of Canada, the Caribbean nations, and the US, but we're also very proud, as you can see here, of the number of participants we had in the survey by region as well. When we drill down the responses from the Canada, Caribbean nations, and US, you can see how many responded by region. Next slide. Oh, perfect. This shows the response rate by our region membership. For those familiar with rates of response in survey data collection, you can see that these are really, really strong response rates. And this is something that we wanted to highlight as a really strong pride point of our survey response, but also of the hard work of our work group to get as many respondents as we did for this survey. So thank you all for your participation in it.
Sorry, folks, have that muting technology. It's always so much fun. So right now we are in the midst of analyzing the quantitative and qualitative survey data. As you can imagine, with such a rich response rate, it's going to take some time for us to dig through these results. And so far, we've been really pleased with the types of comments that we've been receiving. And the survey group, as Melinda explained, we've got the different subgroups working, and the survey analysis group is identifying some early trends and themes to the focus group subcommittee. And so we're all kind of working together and teasing out how the survey data might inform us as we go forward with our focus groups. And so next slide, please, and I can talk a little bit about focus groups. So as Melinda mentioned, we are going to be having the focus groups at all of the 2019 regional conference and the 2019 international conference. So you'll find that if you are lucky enough to be going to a regional conference this year, there's going to be a session set aside in the program. It's going to be the Chat with NACADA Leadership is the session, and that will be the focus group. So it's going to be moderated, and everybody's invited to come and be involved with the conversation. And we're really excited about being able to have that as a part of the regional conferences this year and the international conference as well. But we know that not everybody can attend a regional conference every year. So we are also going to be hosting some virtual focus groups where people can indicate their interest, sign up to be a part of the focus group, and then we'll be selecting virtual focus groups moderated in similar fashion to this, hopefully not as many people all together in one room, and then we'll be able to manage the virtual focus groups. But yes, we will make sure that the size of the groups are managed so that everybody has an ability to speak and have their have their comments contributed to the process for the focus groups as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Shay, and thank you to all our panelists for that brief overview of the region review thus far. So when we put together this virtual town hall, this group was very committed to making lots of space for the Q&A portion. So we're going to move forward to that next. Before we do that, I wanted to highlight this screen again and the page that accompanies this web event. Logistically, if you look at the bottom of your screen, as Brody noted earlier, there is a Q&A button. That is how you can put forward questions to the panel regarding this region review. And Melinda and I are going to be moderating that behind the scenes. We'll talk more about that in a second. Also, just want to draw your attention to the URL that you see on the screen. This is the web page for this particular event. There is a hyperlink to a Google form, again, as Brody noted earlier, and that Google form gives you an opportunity, if you're watching this via recording, or if you just have a thought later on about a question or a comment that you wanted to put forward to the team putting on this virtual town hall, that's going to be available to you until Friday, February 1st. I also want to note that there are some other channels to provide feedback to the region review group, and we'll make sure that you have those at the end of the presentation. But with that, we're going to go ahead and move forward with the Q&A. In addition to the panelists, so Melinda and Shay and Kelly, we also have a subset of the region review group, and most of those folks have joined us in the room today. So as Melinda and I moderate these questions, Melinda's going to direct them to a person who hopefully will be able to give a good answer, and I'm going to invite all the folks who are panelists or Q&A support. If you've got a thought or an idea, just make sure that you jump in and share that. So with that, I'm going to start, Melinda, by asking if we could answer a question that came in. How will this information be communicated back to NACADA members once we've sort of looked through the qualitative and quantitative survey information? Melinda, we still got you on mute.
Look at me, I was being a good panelist. I apologize for that. I was going to say, Kelly, do you want to take an attempt at that first question about how our information will be communicated back to its members?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think we're going to have a number of ways that we're going to do this. Region Review is an internal assessment of the NACADA overall association. So we will have likely more town halls, more discussion on this at NACADA conferences. The ultimate results are going to be put into a presentation and provided to the board of directors with recommendations to hopefully provide some insight and recommendations to them so that they can help make decisions on how they move forward. But we do plan to release a lot of the information once we do have it analyzed for everyone.
Thank you, Kelly. Of course, Carrie had mentioned earlier that we'll have a website where we'll have information available that you can continue to share your information. But then, of course, as we get that information analyzed that Kelly spoke to, we'll be able to put that there and definitely make sure that we are pointing people to that information. So great question. Carrie, should I move on to the next one, or?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that there was a question about having missed the survey and didn't have an opportunity to respond to that, and wanted to reiterate what you were saying about other feedback channels. So we will talk about that at the end of the webinar. But anything else that you wanted to say regarding that, Melinda?
Sure. So we had mentioned the website as an opportunity. We'll definitely have the focus groups. So whether those are in person or virtual would be another opportunity to do that as well. And we will have a comment form, so we'll be able to point to that information on a slide after we finish our Q&As. So thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, really great question. And I think there's a couple parts to this. And so we may need to call on a couple folks on the panel to bring, to respond to this. So what's the history of Canada being integrated into the original region divisions, but Mexico being segregated out as part of the international region? Shouldn't it be North America together or United States alone? If we can maybe talk a little bit about that history and some of that thinking.
Sure. I was actually, Maxine, I don't, that's an opportunity. I'm trying to think of either Maxine or Jennifer, if you have a good sense of that history in terms of how we were originally organized.
This is Maxine, and that's going back quite a ways. We currently don't have members, so many members in Mexico, so that's kind of reflected in our structure and the membership.
Okay. So thank you for that, Maxine. But that's actually a great question. So when you think about how our structure has come to be, it really has been generated on basically member interest. And so if members are living in a particular part of the world, and so as we started thinking about this region review in relationship to the global perspective of NACADA, that has actually led us to creating another type of question in terms of, is that the way that we should be organized? And so thank you for speaking, or whoever, I'm sorry, who submitted that question, because that's one of the things that we're trying to answer, if we should be more structured in the way that we approach the way that we are designating these quote unquote invisible lines around the globe. Thank you.
This is a question that came in about members not being able to attend regional or international conferences. I'm wondering if there was going to be a live stream focus group, or, and I know there might be some alternative options for folks who aren't able to attend the regional international. Melinda, can someone speak to that?
Sure. I can jump in, and then if Kelly and Shay want to chime in, when we think about the focus group pieces, we have been thinking broadly about making sure that we are doing the best job that we can to collect voices and feedback to the process, recognizing the fact that not everybody can always attend a regional conference, whether it's the timing is not right, or it's a financial issue, or your work doesn't allow you to leave campus during those windows. So in terms of the regional conference, we can probably investigate the idea of a live stream focus group, but then I would definitely encourage people to take advantage of the virtual focus groups. We're going to make those at different times so that we can reflect all time zones across the globe to make sure that we're doing the best job that we can to be collecting feedback. And then, of course, we will have an opportunity for people to fill out a Google form, if you will, to just share their information and their thoughts as well. So if they can't attend the virtual focus group, they can't attend the in-person, we want to be able to give people an opportunity to share their thoughts with us. And so the Google form is another way we're going to capture information. But Shay, any feedback or thoughts about the idea of a live streaming event with the focus groups at the regional or international conference?
Well, we hadn't talked actually about reaching out at the regional conferences other than people actually in the room. The virtual focus groups, from my perspective, I think that our virtual focus groups where we have a focus group in this type of setting with a Zoom technology, to me, that's that opportunity for people to participate in live time. So I'm wondering if maybe that's sort of, like, my understanding is this would sort of be the live streaming option as well as having a focus group in this particular format, which is what we've talked about. So, and live streaming at conferences, we can't really reach out through the regional conferences to people who can't come, right? Because of Wi-Fi issues and technology issues. Some of the biggest challenges we have at regional conferences with technology is that sort of audio-visual piece. So teleconferencing isn't always an option at the regional conferences themselves.
Right. Thank you, Shay.
We've had a couple of questions come in that relate to the sharing of the survey information, and particularly with the high response rate, maybe sort of isolating those results from the survey as opposed to sort of aggregating all of it together. Any early thoughts from this region review group on that particular question?
Sure. Kelly, do you want to take an opportunity to respond to that question about sharing initial survey information based on the findings alone?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that we are going to be compiling a lot of this into a report for the board of directors of NACADA. And the way that it does work with an internal assessment is that it is up to the board's discretion on whether or not they want to share all or parts of the information in the responses to the membership at large. Knowing that NACADA is an extremely transparent organization, I imagine that a huge amount of it, if not all of it, will likely be shared. And certainly if there are any really, really large decisions and recommendations reached as, the result of this information gathering, again, extremely transparent processes will be available for everyone to not only view, but also give even further feedback.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Wendy, anything else you'd want to share about that process? We've been working very closely with the Center for Research for NACADA, and Wendy's the director of that. So any thoughts, Wendy, on that question?
Yeah. So when we think about report writing, we think about answering the research questions, of course. And so we'll use all the forms of data, not just the feedback, but also kind of other kinds of data and document data and artifacts and that kind of thing to answer the research questions. The research questions are mostly about feedback, though, from the members. And so there'll be the qualitative, quantitative, qualitative from the survey, quantitative from the survey, qualitative from the focus groups will kind of be weaved together to answer those research questions. So there'll be charts and graphs and response rates and methods and that kind of thing, as well as the stories that are to be told from the open-ended comments on the survey and the focus group transcripts and themes there, and kind of weaving that together by theme. But there will be a lot of both survey results and focus group results, as well as weaving them together. Great question.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wendy. Carrie?
Yeah, we've got a question that came in about just clarifying sort of the focus of the region review group. Is it, how to more effectively utilize the regions, or is it possible that regions could be realigned or redistricted? Any initial thoughts on that?
Sure. I'll go ahead and kick this off and then defer to my colleagues as well. So thank you. That's actually a great question. When we first were charged from the board in terms of analyzing the regional structure, that was one of the questions that did come up. And what we have agreed on is that it's not necessarily designed to rewrite structures from a regional perspective, if you will. But the goal is really to understand how we're serving and supporting our membership in relationship to the fact that we are in a global context. So it's not necessarily just the idea about realigning or redistricting, the way that we think about how we're aligned in our regions currently, but really making sure that we're able to serve and support our memberships, our members, the way that we intended to. So Kelly or Shay, if you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I would just really quickly say, for those of you who did take the survey or are familiar with it, ultimately my favorite question on it was the very, very last question, which did provide a description of exactly what NACADA says that the purpose of the regional division is, and ask then very directly if that is something that you as the survey taker felt was happening. And so, you know, I know we got a lot of really great responses on it just from what I've seen. In fact, actually, all of the data that we collected comes to about 650 plus pages of qualitative responses. But I think that was ultimately the biggest and one of the most important questions that we asked on there for the purpose of this region review. So I really appreciate this question being asked, because I think ultimately we all want to do what is best for all of the members of NACADA and find ways to provide that professional development at the smaller local level, since that is the purpose of our division. So again, thank you very much for that question. It's a really good one.
Okay. I was going to offer the panelists your thoughts, especially given the work that we've done in the past year. Are there any other thoughts that folks might want to share about that particular question? Because I know that that was a topic that has been brought up to us multiple times. Okay. Deb, Karen?
Well, I could jump in.
Okay.
This is Deb Dutterer. I'm actually also serving currently as the chair of the Professional Development Committee. And for us, this is a key assessment of our regional structure and what's being provided for professional development, because one of our big goals this year is to do a gap analysis within the organization. So the information coming from this will help us in a lot of different ways in finding out how we can better serve our members throughout our international focus at this point, as well as the current regional structure. So, you know, taking a look at the structure is important. We as one of the strategic goals, we keep having to evaluate and assess the NACADA organization as a whole to make sure that it is as effective as possible for the members. So we look forward to hearing more results and more feedback from all of you.
Thank you, Deb.
Hey, Melinda and Kelly and Shay, there was a really interesting question that came in regarding, I think, international and thinking about international. So the question had to do with domestic campuses. So U.S. schools that have international campuses, technically those campuses fall under whatever region houses that domestic school, right? But is there a compelling reason why we wouldn't consider allowing those universities with international branch campuses to be more closely affiliated with other schools that are in proximity to them? So the example here shared was George Mason University has a campus in Korea. If we established if we have a stronger presence in East Asia, mm-hmm. Having them be a part of that as opposed to being a part of Region 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that's a really great question, because you think about how, or like internationalization or globalization of higher education, what does this really mean, right? Do branch campuses retain the culture in which they exist, or are they more connected to the idea of, you know, where their home campuses live? I think that this is an important consideration when we start going through the information in terms of what people are needing. So, for example, is that branch campus needing to be connected with partners where they currently are in the globe, or are they looking for professional development that speaks more so to the work that's happening on their campuses? And when you think about the context in which NACADA has always operated, the networking, the sharing of information, all those things are really critical to the experiences of being a member of NACADA. And so that is something that we probably will want to be thinking about as we think about alignments, if you will, because eventually we'll be coming to that question. And so I think that it is something that we should definitely keep on our radar as we move forward, because we do want to make sure that we are considering the context of the culture in which people are operating. And going back to what Kelly had mentioned earlier, you know, the intimacy of the networks that we're creating, and making sure that we are giving our members what it is that they need. Anybody else? I'm thinking, you know, Karen, is there something that you want to share, or Shay, when you think about the context in which the way that you're operating, is there any other thoughts you might want to share on that question?
Well, the only other thing I would add is that one of the wonderful things about NACADA is that, we can take advantage of the professional development opportunities throughout the whole association. So if just regardless of whatever regional structure we have in place, it's everybody has the opportunity to attend a conference that aligns with their own either location or interests, so that if the satellite campuses is over in the United Arab Emirates, for instance, it might be better, even though they're tied to a campus in Region 8, then it might be more worthwhile for them to also take part in the international conferences as far as professional development. So I think that's one of the great things about our association, is that everybody's welcome.
Right. Well, thank you, Shay. That's actually an excellent point. When we think about what our members need, we are trying to untether ourselves, right, to the idea that it can only exist in this format. It can only exist with this level of content. So that's actually a great reminder. So thank you, Shay. Carrie, we want to move to the next question.
Yeah, I love this question that came in. So it was regarding, okay, after the findings are distributed to the body, is there another way to close that loop? Will members have an opportunity to respond and reply to findings? The question pointed to remaining town hall meetings, and is that a venue where people can do that? And it's not something that we planned. Those remaining town hall meetings have other specific topics, but I wonder, from the standpoint of the Region Review Group, once you share out broadly about surveys or focus groups or any of the data, what's the feedback loop then for members based on what they see in those results?
That's actually an excellent question. We actually hadn't thought about creating another venue, but given the nature of the project and the interest that we think is going to snowball as we start having the virtual focus groups, and as we start having these conversations in our regional conferences, in the international conference as well, I can see people wanting to have another opportunity similar to this one to be able to respond, which we would welcome. I think what I enjoy most about NACADA is that it really is a grassroots effort for us to continue to support ourselves in our own development. And so when we collect this information, digest it, give feedback in terms of our findings, I would want to hear how people respond to what it is that we found out. Does it surprise people for what it is that we found out through this work, or does it confirm a lot of the things that people want to know, or that they've always assumed but just didn't have any evidence to support that? So I think that we would welcome an opportunity. And I think that question for coming in to kind of put that thought in our heads of, is there another way for us to continue to close the loop and giving that information back and letting people respond, and then seeing if that changes anything that might have come out of the process.
Okay, here's another really good question. So, as part of the region review, will you also be looking at things such as doing a financial audit of each region in an effort to understand whether current funding structures as it ties to the region is really effective, or could maybe be better appropriated? Is that part of the consideration at this point?
Karen, is that something that you can speak to, Tony? The question that's on the table?
Yes, Tony, I thank you very much for asking that question. You've actually touched on something that is very important to me in this process. And we do have a vision for the focus groups, in which we will have focus groups of just, say, past region chairs, past steering committee members, individuals that can really speak to the regional budget structure. And it's definitely something that we want to look at, and I would encourage you to make sure that if you have concerns about that your voice is heard in one of these upcoming focus groups.
No, thank you. Thank you, Karen, for your response, because that is something that when you think about the idea of reorganizing or restructuring, the funding models in terms of how efficient are we with our resources is absolutely something we'll be looking at. So thank you for that, Kelly. I mean, Karen. My apologies.
Hey, Deb, did you have something to add on that too? It looked like you were trying to chime in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in that the Finance Committee certainly will be very interested in the results of this because of how the regions are currently funded. And I know that over the years, the regional structure, we've been looking at that funding model. So I appreciate you bringing up this question, Tony, directly to us, and would appreciate ideas coming forward, because I know the Finance Committee is also very interested in the results of this region review and how that could potentially impact the financial structure.
Okay, I'm going to go to another question if that's okay, Melinda.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Doc.
Yeah. So, did the survey or will the did the survey or will the focus group grouping address if or how NACADA's international and or regional programming affects local professional organizations or their development?
So Kelly, do you mind taking that part for the survey part of that question?
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of think through this in my head exactly what the question is asking, and really connect that to what the questions are that we asked in the survey. I think one of the ones that come to mind specifically was that we did ask both current and non-members, because they did receive slightly different surveys. We did ask both groups where else, if anywhere, they did receive other professional development, whether that was from something in a in the setting of their institution, perhaps, or maybe another organization that they're a part of outside of higher education, through volunteerism, et cetera. But that is definitely something that was addressed in that sense. Just trying to think through anything else. We also obviously have, as sort of part of our regional structure, a lot of affiliated organizations to NACADA. So that was something that we also asked questions about in there as well. So I don't know if that directly addresses this question, but that is, from what I can remember, what we had included in the survey that could at least touch on it.
Sure. Well, no, thank you, Kelly. I mean, I think that the heart of that question is, what would the impact be, right, in terms of other local professional development organizations? So we were interested in where other people went to get professional development. And I believe in the focus groups, we probably will find space or room to discuss, the things that people are wanting to see. Maybe it's because that they're getting it in another setting, and so maybe that's what they're wanting to see in NACADA. I think it would be great for Deb to actually chime in on this question, given her work around our professional development committee.
Thanks, Melinda. Well, one of the things specifically is I've also been looking at the qualitative data coming off of the survey, and I can tell you that there's a significant number of comments regarding individuals finding their professional development at state drive-ins, and then also their campus-wide. So I think this points to the incredible value that our allied organizations provide to the NACADA program. So we're trying to figure out, as we continue to work on the qualitative data, if there ends up being conflicts. To date, we haven't seen that people have said, I have to choose between the state or a statewide drive-in or a local, or even the statewide and a regional. Now, I know in some areas that may be a challenge, but in the data we've received, we haven't seen that yet. Okay. Where the conflict typically we're seeing comes in is, do I go to a regional or do I go to the annual conference? And I think that seems to be where we're seeing more of a conflict. So our hope is going forward that we can continue to benefit from the allied structure that we have in place and how that supports our organization going forward.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. So Carrie, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a time check here. We've got maybe about 5 or 10 more minutes for questions. So acknowledge that if you have something that you wanted to get in, to please go ahead and forward that. We got a question that just came in. And does the data indicate which regions have been the strongest by drive-in focus? Might need some clarification on that one. Thoughts on that?
Sure. Well, I'm thinking, so for example, when we collected information in terms of where people will go or the things that they're interested in, when we say drive-in focus, I'm assuming, you know, that one-day conference model. Maybe that's what the question is pointing to. And I think we did collect information in terms of where people were going for professional development in the survey. My apologies for not having the specific question in my head, but I know that that was one of the things that we were really interested in learning from the membership in terms of, you know, what were you doing in terms of getting professional? Oh, perfect. Yes, one-day conference model. Thank you for clarifying. I was just hoping that I was on the right track with that. But yes, we were able to get some feedback on what experiences people were wanting. In terms of what's ideal for them, and then allowing people to provide, you know, comments in terms of why something would work better for them than not. But Kelly, I didn't know if you remember the specific question or if you could speak to the idea of a preference for a one-day conference model.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing and why I am personally so excited by the region review process. One of the things, I'm a former Region 10 chair, and so the region that I oversaw has a huge amount of geographic distance, even between institutions, where one state can't even realistically do a drive-in, right? Like people would have to fly to the drive-in. But other regions, they don't even have to do that for their region conference. So I think there's, some interesting responses that Deb already sort of referred to in that qualitative area. I will also, kind of remind everyone, we just closed the survey in mid-December, and there is so much data to comb through. So that I will say, we haven't really been able to actually come up with any even really initial findings truly just yet. We're still working on coding a lot of that qualitative data and analyzing everything. So I wouldn't be comfortable really stating anything that the data has suggested yet, because we haven't been able to cover that process. That's still ongoing.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. And we did have a question that said, what events have you attended? And drive-ins are an option on that survey. So as we start to drill down, we will be able to get a sense of how many people are participating in that particular kind of conference experience. So Carrie, any other questions? I'm going to kick it back to you.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts here. One, I want to express we've got some really positive comments and gratitude for you all for your work. And because you are in the thick of this, have there been any other comments or thoughts that you've heard either formally or anecdotally from folks as you've started to engage in this process that we haven't gotten to with the questions that have been posed today? Anything else that we feel like we want to share with the community at this point? And I would put that to anyone on the panel or the Q&A support group.
Sure. I know that I have some thoughts, but I just kind of want to kick it out to my colleagues. Is anybody interested in kind of jumping into that question first? I'm Wendy. I'm going to pick on you a bit.
Oh, well, I think that I've been so incredibly impressed with this work group and the extent to which that they're considering creative pieces of evidence and to broaden, it really is about capturing lived experiences and perceptions and ideas. And my perception of this, of the work, is that everything is on the table. And there are no preconceived plans or things that we're trying to subversively get done. This is a blank slate, and a really important internal assessment process, kind of a program evaluation kind of thing. So this is your opportunity to bring it, bring your ideas, bring your experiences, and be authentic about it. And that's what they really, really would like to hear.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Kelly, Shay, any thoughts to that? Last question that Carrie posed. Okay. No, I mean, thank you, Wendy. I echo a lot of what you shared. I think what has continued my excitement about the work is everything that Wendy has just shared. You know, things are on the table, ideas are on the table, thinking deeply and richly, to be quite honest, about how we continue to do well by our members. This organization has become very important to me for many different reasons, whether it's the networking or whether it's the professional pieces that are helping to keep my campus going. And when I think about making sure that we are continuing to put ourselves in a position where everybody can receive those benefits, that's what keeps my heart happy in this organization. And that's what I look forward to being able to build and continue to give service to that end. So any thoughts from our board members regarding the nature of the work of our project? Okay. Carrie, I'm going to kick it back to you.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. So we are about to put a bow on this virtual town hall. I'm going to have Jennifer advance actually to the next slide and just tell you a little bit of, by way of wrap up. Please keep your eyes on our event website that I cited earlier, and remember that there's a Google form there. And then in terms of the region review group, I did want Shay to provide just a few summary comments on how to get more information, how to follow through the focus groups, etc. So Shay, I'm going to kick it to you real quickly.
Great. Thanks, Carrie. So on the slide, you'll notice that we have our the URL to find the Region Review website. It's pretty easy. Well, if you spent time on the NACADA website, easy is relative term. You go to NACADA Leadership, under Regional Division and Region Review. There you'll find a web page which has some information. It gives you kind of an update on where we're at. Sort of we're doing our analysis right now of the questionnaire. There are some opportunities there to sign up for focus groups, for the virtual and in-person focus groups. We'll collect that information and hopefully be able to connect with you on those. There's also an opportunity for those that weren't able to complete the survey to leave comments, or even if you did complete the survey and then after today's town hall you have other comments that you'd like to submit, please go to the website there and you'll be able to leave your comments there for us as well. So still lots of opportunities for people to engage and get involved, and we really do want to hear what you have to say and share with us.
Okay, I'm going to jump back in and say thanks again to our panelists and our Q&A support, Region Review Group, for your wonderful work. I want to thank our colleagues at the Executive Office for their support today, particularly Jennifer Jocelyn and Michelle Holliday. Thanks for helping us make this happen. And especially thanks to all of you who were able to join us today for the Town Hall, for your great questions and your willingness to chime in on this important topic. So with that, we're going to say farewell, say thanks much to you all, and have a good Friday.